the IAIMA Podcast with Loretta and Bianca. Stories, advice and discussions to resource, encourage and support independent music artists.
Some independent artists see having a manager as a badge of honour. But when do you really need a manager? How do you find a good one? And what do they actually do? Our co-founder Loretta runs Safe Music Management and manages fellow co-founder Bianca Rose. So on today's podcast, we share our experience and advice on management. Yeah, I think from an artist perspective, that trust and that transparency is so important. Really early on in my career, I was approached by someone, and I was at a gig and I was performing a lot, and I was having these meetings and it was quite exciting at the time. And I met this guy came up to me and he wanted to manage me, and I met him at a gig. And the thing is, I did have all those feelings that he had great vision for where he wanted to take me. He was excited, he was passionate, and he put the work in, he was there. But I always felt a bit like that there's more. Like, he was very shifty in the way that he did things, and he wouldn't really give you lots of information. And even just like knowing his full name, he was very, very like undercover. Like, no, he's of the mind that managers need to be behind the scenes, and he just would never give you much information. And I just went along with this for a bit, even though it'd just be weird. And then other people in the industry, I had a lawyer at the time who was a lawyer to lots and lots of awesome artists, and he knew about this manager and he didn't really like him. But I still kind of was like, yeah, it was all these things that were indicators. And with hindsight, I was like, it's the trust. The trust I needed was so important. But the fact that he was so passionate, and he would connect me with people and give me awesome opportunities for gigs and things like that, that seemed to override that niggly feeling. And then he negotiated. He was negotiating with a producer, and this producer was also a friend. And then he was negotiating with them just like sort of an EP situation, and obviously there wasn't much finances from our end, but he was basically negotiating a deal that would be really bad for them, the production team, but good for me, and a big risk for them, that they wouldn't actually see any money, or that if this didn't work out they wouldn't see anything, but they weren't getting any money up front or anything like that. So they came to me sort of separately and told me this, and I didn't know that he was doing all this on my behalf. So really, when someone is negotiating a deal that's bad, it's not that, oh, Bianca's manager did this, it's Bianca's doing this because it's me that's on the line.
Yeah.
And that's when
it's your reputation.
It's my reputation. So that's when I was like, no, I'm cutting all ties. So I'm cutting all ties, and so then I was texting this friend saying, no, this is awful. And then they text me again, and I said, yeah. And I was texting back saying, yeah, I'm just going to drop them. I'm just going to drop this person. I'm not going to let this person be a manager. Send. And then I sent that message to my manager. I sent it to him, and I was like, no, come back. This is not the way I want to do this. Come back. And it was done. And he was like, oh, so yeah, you want to drop me then?
No.
Yeah, I just think that's the best thing right now. It was really, really, really bad. I just didn't know what happened. He must have sent me a message whilst I was texting, and then I just responded to him. Oh, it was just awful. But it was good. Gosh. I got away from him quite quickly, so that's the only blessing. But yeah, trust is so important, and going with your gut. If something feels wrong, it probably is, and at least have a conversation about that.
Yeah.
Or get some counsel, get some advice on that.
And sticking from the artist's perspective then, for a while you just didn't have any management, and obviously you had your break as well. Yeah. But why did you decide that you needed a manager at the point when you asked me? And obviously we did have our friendship, but that could be tricky as well.
Absolutely. I think that I felt like I've taken myself as far as I can go, and that I do I know who I am. It's been quite a few years since my last management situation, and I'd grown so much as a person and as an artist, and I knew what success meant to me. You know, I'd come to this place of, you know, reconciling the fact that I'm doing music. I know that music is going nowhere in my life. I love this. I'm in this for the long haul, whatever the journey is. And so a lot of those questions in my mind had been answered. And so I've committed to this journey. I'd made some music. I'd made an album that I was proud of, and I'd put that out there. And then you also helped me with a tour. You'd help me do my first UK tour off the back of this album, and we'd work together. It was kind of a trial period without a trial period, wasn't it? You know, we were working on IAIMA as well, and obviously been friends for ages, but we actually worked together on my music. So after we did the tour, it just seemed that it'd make sense just to carry on this happy partnership. we just had a trial basically, and it seemed to work.
Because actually, even before No Fear Here, your album came out, then I'd done a bit of consultancy with you, because you were the guinea pig, weren't you, for my first starting with doing this. So it had been a really amazing thing to see your journey back into music, the whole story behind No Fear Here, which was you coming back to music and coming back to yourself, and seeing you do that and be involved with the launch gig you had and then the tour. And one of the questions I get asked a lot is, well, what do you look for in an artist as a manager? And that may be something interesting to hear. And again, I can't speak for all managers. I'm sure many managers look for different things. There probably are managers out there who just want somebody who's going to, you know, get to number one quick, take the money and go. But for me, I think, especially at the time when you asked me, and you kind of asked me like half hiding, mainly because you knew how busy I was.
I know.
And part of me, and this isn't to do with how amazing I am as a manager, because I haven't done that much. I'm relatively new to this, but at the moment, at least 2-3 times a month, I get asked by somebody to manage them. And I have to say no a lot of the time, because I want to give the artist that I'm working with the time. But in terms of why I said yes to Yubi and what I look for in an artist, for me, is one of the things I get artists to do with the consultancy, but also when I work with them, I've devised this artist development questionnaire, which is just something that I just wanted to know, to understand the artists I'm working with, but also for them to understand themselves. Again, coming back to this thing, which I think is the most important thing, to know who you are as an artist. And I have to say, again, you were my first guinea pig. In fact, I think I just said to you, do you mind just having a go at this and let me know what you think?
Yeah.
And I was just stunned by your answers in the questionnaire. I just loved how you answered each question. It was so clear to me that you knew who you were as an artist and what you wanted to achieve. And you were so comfortable in that it was empowering to read. And for me as a manager, again, like I've said, when I know that an artist knows who they are, I know what to do with it. When you give me your answers of, this is why I do my music, this is who it's for, I'm like, great, I know what to do. I know how to package that. I know which people need to hear it. I know where to place it. So I automatically had all of these ideas through reading your answers. And I'd already seen, because we'd been working together unofficially, your work ethic and your integrity as an artist. So when I saw all of those things, although I knew it would still be a lot of work, I knew that the work that I don't have energy with, which is somebody who hasn't bothered to work on themselves, somebody who's not going to do their bit, that's the bit I don't have the time for. But when somebody's done that, it's empowering for me to work with someone like that. So that's what I look for, is an artist who knows who they are, who's willing to do their part of the work, who will respect my opinion, who will know who they are, but will still have enough room to go, oh, I hadn't thought of that. I will at least entertain that thought. And I know we went backwards and forwards on whether you should do an EP or an album. We really discussed that. And I think to start with, I'd said to you to do an EP.
Yeah, he said to do 2 EPs, and I was like almost there. I was like, yeah, that's such a good idea, you know, momentum wise. And I took a long time thinking about that. And that was a good actual example of you suggesting something, and I really took it on, and I really investigated, like, is this a good idea? But something, you know, in my investigations, I just thought, you know, this body of work was created, and it as a journey, and it should probably be delivered fully in that journey. And that was the only reason why. But I was like literally almost sold by that. But it was that back and forth and that conversation that really helped
and similarly,
to make that idea.
I remember my response to you when you told me your decision. I was like, your answer has convinced me. So it works both ways. Like to have that conversation, to really go there. So me saying that made you really look into what your why is.
Which is so important.
So important. And when you came back with it, I'm like, I can't disagree with that. I'm on board. I changed my mind. If I hadn't, I would have still supported you. Yeah. But your research in yourself and to go why you felt that it should be an album, and it's been proved that it was the right decision in doing that. So the trust and respect has to be there on both sides. Absolutely. That you can come with your ideas, but that there's nobody's going to just shut either one down. But ultimately, I understand that I'm here to serve your vision, but that's in a partnership role. I guess maybe we could talk even about working together as friends, because as IAIMA, we're friends and we work together, and as management. And I remember when I said to somebody who's a little bit of a mentor for me that I was going to start management, they said to me, please don't manage any of your friends. Because I've got lots of friends who are artists. And I was like, I kind of already have started doing that.
Sorry.
Yeah. And it's an interesting one, because I think it can go incredibly wrong, because you can have the over familiarity. This is in some scenarios. There could be the fact that you feel that you can't say because it could threaten the friendship.
Absolutely.
But it really works for us.
Yeah, I'm not sure why it works so well. I think we are really honest.
Yeah.
And we do really respect each other. And I was about to say that we can separate the friendship from business, but I don't think we do.
We actually don't know. I've realised that. Like, we'll often start our business meetings by talking about what we've been stressed about, which could be nothing to do with business. Yeah,
literally. I'm not sure how we're making it work. I think because we're doing IAIMA as well.
That overcross, and we saw that working.
Yeah, that it works.
One thing I was going to say, I suppose this ties in terms of choosing a manager. So choosing a friend to manage you versus a hotshot manager from a management company. Now, there's pros and cons to both. You might think straight away, surely the hotshot manager who manages an artist who's in the mainstream charts at the moment, surely they're going to have the connections, they're going to do better for me. Admittedly, they will definitely be better connected. They will definitely know more people. They may even have money to invest into you. But the problem with going with a manager like that, although if they've approached you, then they obviously see something in you. But if they've got 2-3 artists, or even one artist that is doing very well in the mainstream, there's a lot of attention on them, you can guess that you're not going to be their absolute priority. And while you're developing your career, you need somebody who's passionate about you and willing to put that time in. Similarly, you may get a friend who has no experience whatsoever in management, but you just know they get you. They not only do they think you're great and incredibly talented, but they really feel that your music deserves to get out there. You can just see this passion. And I would take a manager who would take a bullet for you and be passionate about you and get you over one who's got all the connections in the world, but they just they could see something in you, but you don't have that connection any day.
And that's like Chance the Rapper, his manager, Pat. He didn't necessarily have the experience, but he works really hard in sort of the live music scene in the area, and he came across Chance, and he just loved what he did, and he had passion. And it was Pat has this complex video on YouTube, this interview, Blueprint interview, and he talks all about it. And
I think he said to him, "Can I help? What can I
do?
Can I buy you sandwiches?"
Absolutely, I'll just do anything. And I think Chance's dad saw like his passion and the fact that he would work, and like basically told Chance, this is a good person to choose to manage your career. And I do think that's important, obviously, because if you're passionate, then you will learn. There's all the things you need to know, you will learn, and you will learn how to get into rooms with people that you need to get into rooms with. You'll learn how to take that music and get it to that promoter and all those sorts of things. I think that passion and that drive and that excitement for that for your music that the manager can have is crucial.
And on to the practical thing, all of those things, and I would say they're more important, are personality things, as in connection, they're passionate about you, they would get that. But also, if you're an artist who is a creative, I can't stress how important it is when you're negotiating with people or booking things that it comes across professional. So making sure that your manager will do that for you, that they have the skills, they have the people skills to come across assertive when they need to and chase that money when you haven't been paid for something, and they're not afraid to do those things, but at the same time they know how to forge good relationships, and that they're personable in that way, and that they're going to get connections for you, and all of those things are really important, that they're organised. There's no point getting a manager that's disorganised if you're disorganised yourself. So and it might not even be their strength, but just seeing that that they can deliver on all of those things are important to look for in a manager as well, and just that they have your best interests at heart, that you believe they've got your best interests at heart.
Just a quick reminder that we have a growing library of really useful videos on our YouTube page, including interviews with artists and music industry insiders sharing their experience and expertise. Search IAIMA on YouTube or visit our website www.iaima.co.uk. So how do you find a manager? That's a big question.
Well, again, they could be right under your nose. It could be your mate. It could be somebody who you've grown up with, or who, whenever you've done a gig, they might not even be a close friend, but they're always there. They always take an interest, and you can see that they really believe in you. So perhaps it's somebody you know, a peer. Luckily, these days, there are also organisations that have directories. So one that I always mention is the MMF, which is the Music Managers Forum. If you go to mmf.net, they actually have a directory where you can there's loads of managers listed, and you can contact managers and submit your music and basically ask them if they're taking on any board. I think on the directory it might even say people who've got their books open. So approaching a manager yourself, literally looking for them online, looking for the artists that they work with and that they're artists you admire. I would say there's probably doesn't make sense to approach a manager who's managing an artist exactly like you, because then it's going to be a conflict of interest. They're not going to need or want or be in anyone's best interest to have an artist that's exactly the same as you, because you're going to be competing for gigs and opportunities.
Right.
But if it's a manager who's the way they work, or the type of artist that you think even your work might even complement one of their other artists, because then there's the opportunity of working together, collaborating or touring together, and those things, that's a thing to look out for as well. Good. So approaching them individually, like I said, there's not a week that goes by that I don't get somebody sending me some music and asking, and I try to always at least give some advice, or offer some consultancy if they're in a position to be able to afford to pay for that, just to give some short-term advice, or point them towards somebody who I think might be taking on artists. So it is easier to find a manager, but sometimes, like I say, it's not necessarily about approaching big companies. It's about looking around you, somebody who's got the skills and who believes in you. Yeah.
And so what sort of questions do you ask somebody that you might want to manage you?
I think listen to what questions they ask you is a really important one. What do they want to know about you? Ask them how they see you as an artist, what their plans would be, what they would want to do with you, where they would want to take you. See if they say some refreshing things that you hadn't thought of that you think is a good idea. Ask them how they prefer to work. So going back to when we were talking about whether you're looking for somebody who's very involved with every decision you make creatively. If it's somebody who's like that, but you actually just want somebody as a sounding board, then that's probably the wrong kind of personality. Ask questions like who they've worked with before, their connections, and if they're new to this, just ask them what their skills are. Ask them what they're passionate about and what they enjoy. Often where people's passions are, it's usually what they're good at as well. And the other thing I would say is to just always have a trial period. Even if somebody looks great, even if they're friends, we said we had that trial period because our friendship came first. So first and foremost, we wanted to preserve that. But sometimes with somebody, it just might not work. You just might not be the right personalities, or you just might end up that you've got different ways of working. So I would normally say about 3 months, but 3 to 6 months, I would say, where that you can literally both of you walk away after that, and there's no hard feelings. And for whatever reason, and just decide that works equally on both ways. But it's really important to have that to test it out.
Right, that's good. Should we that tricky one, contracts and fees?
Yeah,
I feel like that's the next logical step to talk
definitely
about.
Especially if we're talking about say you've got to the end of your trial period, and you think, I want to work with this person. Both sides, you thought this is really working. What shall we do? Shall we what's the next step? It's really interesting with this one, with contracts, because earlier I spoke about the bad experience that I had, and a part of me thinks, why didn't I just get that contract ready to sign on the day when the 3 months was up? And that's what I felt at the time. And lots of people, the lawyer I was working with at the time, had said the same thing. Lots of people had talked about that, to protect myself. And in some ways I see that. And I would still advise most people to make sure that you have some kind of contract, because what a contract really is something where you talk about worst case scenario. And really, in a good relationship, you sign this contract. It says what will happen if it goes wrong, because you don't need a contract when it's going right. You put it in a drawer and you probably never have to look at it again. It's there to get out. When things go wrong, remember we agreed this. So in that sense, both people are protected. It shouldn't be anything to be afraid of. But there's a part of me that feels it's a little bit like forcing someone to stay married to you who doesn't want to stay married to you. If somebody's betrayed you, or clearly you worked out this isn't going to work, this isn't good for anybody, why would I want to force them to stay with me anyway? Okay, if it's just in case if I'd had a contract, I'd at least been paid the money that was owed me, and that you'd hope somebody would ethically make that decision anyway. But what I've realised, when I work with artists where I absolutely trust them and there's a transparency, I know that scenario would never happen. And I know that because deep down I knew with this artist that trust wasn't really there. So rightly or wrongly, I actually don't have a contract with any of the artists I work with. And we do say every now and then, we really should get round to doing that contract. It's not, we haven't actually definitively decided we're not going to have one. So I know that each of my artists would be prepared to sign one, but we've kind of just not got round to it.
Yeah, and I think this is not advice that we're giving to anyone, but I think certainly for our situation, I feel like it'll present a need, like be it some sort of, label services, label distribution, all these other sorts of things that might come along, which would be like, actually, let's potentially go formalise, okay, this is how much I'm going to take from this that's going to come in, and you, and those sorts of things. Like it would, even though we wouldn't need a contract to do that, I think it would probably be quite good at that stage where there's like more of a flow of finances flowing in and out and doing all those sorts of things.
It makes things clear. It's there black and white for everybody. And ultimately, any contract should be for your protection and for your artist's protection. So I would advise people to get a contract because it shouldn't be designed to bind anybody. It should actually be designed to bring freedom if that scenario comes, and to make sure that things are clear. And hopefully, as I said, you put it in a drawer and that's it. You never have to look at it again. And I also think it's important to point out that if you do sign a contract, which I would advise, that artist and manager both have separate legal advice. That's absolutely imperative, that you have separate lawyers and separate legal advice, so it's absolutely fair and transparent. But it's well known that Stevie Wonder's manager, who he's had since almost the beginning of his career, they've never signed a contract. They've shaken hands and it's worked. That element of trust is there. And there does get to a point where it gets longer and longer that you kind of feel, well, what's the point? But at the same time, I think it should only ever be designed, particularly the times when it's come up when I thought, it's about time to do that, is when we've been entering into agreements with other people. Absolutely. So to define and protect our relationship. But for me, most independent artists aren't making any money at the beginning, and I hate the idea of binding someone in to have to give me some of the little bit of money they need when I know they're not earning enough at the moment to support themselves. And I'm absolutely fine by that, which is what's ironic about this other artist. I have invested my own money into my artists, and I just don't feel comfortable with taking money from them when they're not earning at all yet. At that time, when we earn, hopefully we'll all win. So I'm quite happy to take my cuts then.
Absolutely. So we've covered a lot of things.
Well, shall we talk about cuts?
Oh, yeah. Cuts and fees.
Yeah, people ask that as well. The average, the general cut that a manager takes in the UK is 20%. In the US and in some circumstances that can be more. It could be 25 or even 30% if a manager is really being proactive in making things happen for your career. And sometimes it's less if you've got two managers, for example, one, like I said, who does the admin, who like more finance, and one who is the day-to-day creative manager. It may be 15% to one manager and the 5%, but usually it comes to around 20%. So that gives you a guideline that if you approach somebody and if they're asking you for 40%, run a mile.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm of the thinking that from an artist's perspective, regardless of whether you have a manager, you should still work incredibly hard. A manager or a label situation or whatever doesn't mean that you sit back a little bit. I think that the best scenario in terms of moving forward and making progress is to work incredibly hard, regardless of who's on your team. Mm-hmm. And I've seen situations, and I've even had situations, especially my last management situation, where you kind of sit back from certain things, sit back from even thinking strategically, and you just kind of put that into somebody else's hands completely. And I feel like there's much more room for contention, or there's much more room for actually not progressing at a steady rate. Is that, how do you work with your artists, and what have you seen? Yeah,
that's exactly how it is for me. And actually one of the biggest things I've learned, so one of my artists is signed, and one of the things I've learned through that relationship, it's exactly the same as you've just described there, between a manager and when an artist gets a manager, the same as when an artist gets signed, is the best advice I could give anyone is to still work as if you're independent, as if you're on your own, but in partnership. As soon as you go, okay, that's my bit done, it's down to somebody else to do the work, then you've missed something, you've missed perspective. But as soon as you work and in partnership with people, that's when the most can be achieved. So since my artist Joshua Luke Smith got signed, we've worked as if we're independent. We've still put all the work in, booking the tour, if you like, for us. I think people think as soon as that happens and the label does all that, we book that. Josh is constantly writing, coming up with themes and scenarios. The label come alongside and they support and they empower what we're doing. And actually, that's what I believe a manager should do. It's your career, it's your music. You should come with your music, who you are as an artist, and a manager should come in and empower what you're doing and create opportunity and basically amplify that. So I can't do that if an artist isn't doing their bit. If they've not finished the songs or finished their project, or if they're not giving me music, there's no opportunity for me to create for them. There's no one I can say, hey, have a listen to this music that they put out 5 years ago. Is not going to get them a gig this month. So as long as they're doing their work, I do know some artists who have spoken to me unofficially because they have seen what I've been doing with my artists, and they've been a bit concerned that their manager doesn't seem to be doing certain things that they expected. And they were saying to me, am I wrong? Have I got a false expectation? Should they not be doing that? I kind of feel like they should be. And what I've said to them, because again, it is down to the art of their relationship, but firstly, they need to feel the fact they don't feel that they can say that and have that conversation. I hope that any of my artists would say, what are we doing with this? Or even if they do see that I'm busy and I am going to get sidetracked, I'm managing 4 artists and I'm also working on other projects. And occasionally it needs for my artist to say, can we have a vision day? And I'm never going to say no to that. And I'm like, oh yeah, we do need to do that. And when we have them, I'm fully in it and we fully come up with ideas, and it's really important to periodically do that. But if they just waiting for me to say that, and then they're saying behind my back, oh, well, they've not got a plan with me.
Yeah.
So you can prompt on that way, you can have that conversation. But if you've asked your manager, if you've delivered to your manager and then they're not creating opportunities or even give you any feedback or letting you know what you're doing, it's absolutely within your right to say, hey, where are we going here, or what are we working towards? Or if you feel in the dark as to what they're doing, just like you alluded with the manager you worked with before, you didn't really know what they were doing.
Yeah.
You knew they had the contacts, but you saw no evidence of their work.
And found out that the way of working wasn't sort of the way I wanted to work.
Yeah. So I think you need to be able to be honest if it's not working, and be able to ask questions. And even if that answer is, I'm just really busy at the moment, I'm really sorry, but this is when we can do it. But if that's constantly the answer and you're being not prioritized, they don't have the time for you, that's a conversation that you need to have that's really honest as well. But I would say, yes, work like you don't have a manager, but certainly your manager should be pulling their weight, particularly in the areas that you can't or haven't got, because that's the whole idea of having a manager.
That's the point. It's like a relationship, it's a partnership as well, and everyone's got to be doing their part. But as you said early on in our conversation, like, we are, as artists, running the ship. Like, it's our thing, and managers coming along, literally enhancing and supporting and helping to move that forward. But we can't abandon ship. We can't just go, okay, yeah, I'm just going to just like abandon everything. I'm just going to sit and I'm just going to have a nap. Nap. You take over. We can't do that.
Again, I do love my analogies. It's the equivalent of being in a rowboat, if you like. And before, you had both oars and you were struggling, and you're paddling and paddling. It was really hard work. And suddenly you have someone who's coming in to help you. Now, you can either go, great, put your feet up, let go of both oars, give it to your manager and watch them and even beat the drum while they go, come on.
Struggle
while they struggle. Or you can go, now there's two of us, let's both get a set of oars. It's not as much effort for me, and because there's two of us, we're getting there faster. I think that's probably the best analogy of what it should be like.
That's awesome. I think we've covered so much, actually, where management is concerned.
Yeah. Again, if you have any questions on management that we haven't covered, get in touch. We'll be very happy to find out. As I said, I'm the first to say I'm fairly new to this, so very much learning as I go and learning a lot and really enjoying the journey. There's some great books on management. If you're thinking of being a manager, or if you don't have a manager yet and you're not quite at that stage, there's two books that I always recommend. One book is called All You Need to Know About the Music Business. This is an old book now, but it's been revised most recently in 2014. It's by Donald S. Passman. You can get it from Amazon. You can get a Kindle edition of that as well. Do bear in mind with this one, it's actually American, so a lot of the things in it will talk about American law, but the principles are really good and absolutely the same. If you want a UK one that I can recommend is called Music the Business from Anne Harrison. She was actually a music lawyer. She is a music lawyer still. It's the essential guide to the law and the deals. So this will give you some really practical stuff if you've got people interested in you and you've got some things where you're feeling a bit out of your depth in how they work.
So I think we've come to the end of our chat on management. As Loretta said, if you've got any questions or anything like that, do hit us up on our social media pages. Our handle is We Are IAIMA, and we actually have a video that Loretta made. We filmed with Loretta talking about management, and it's got some really good pieces of information in there. A lot of the stuff we've spoken about today, but if you want something really concise and just really hits those points, do check out our YouTube page, which is IAIMA. If you search IAIMA on YouTube, you'll be able to find our video on management there too.
For more great content from IAIMA, find us on social media at We Are IAIMA. Check out our Spotify playlist for new music from independent artists. Search We Love Independent Music.
And don't forget to sign up to our mailing list, where you'll receive a free 10-day guide especially designed to inspire and equip independent music artists with some really useful, practical and inspirational resources. Sign up at www.iaima.co.uk.